What's my purpose?
Am I here?
Where did I come from?
How come there's so much evil in the world?
I'm scared.
How do I know what's true anymore?
Okay, we're back here again with the third episode, talking with Abdu about Dad answers the tough questions or attempts to answer the tough questions. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I have a corner on understanding of everything, but I am 61. Abdu, you're 53?
53, yeah.
53. So, as you live longer and more stuff happens to you and you're dealing with how you react to it, my faith has stood up to that. And here I am 61, so grateful that I became a believer when I was in my 20s after some difficult times that we had. Um, so anyway, I believe that it stands the test of time,
Yeah.
and that's again going back to previous episodes about wanting to understand what's true. And then I think truth stands up. Jesus said that if you build on this foundation, it'll stand. If you build on on the sand, then it won't. And so
Right.
you want to have that solid foundation. But
Right.
there's so much to this, and like I mentioned in the last episode, you got to kind of hold things with an open hand and go, okay, that sounds good, but I want to know more.
Right.
And so ultimately with this series too, I want to open it up so people can actually ask questions too. But I want to get us, again, going back to a foundation, get a kind of foundation of why we're doing this and what the hope is that we can kind of pass along to the next generation or even the older generation. I do have kids on my channel that are 80 years old that still come to me for for dad advice.
I love
And
that.
so anyway, it's just kind of
That's terrific.
there. Yeah, so one of the things I talked to you about previously off camera was I believe that our lives come down to three big questions: is where did I come from, why am I here, and where am I going? I think that if you can get those answered good enough in your own mind, it kind of shapes how you then live your life. Because if you're living without purpose, you know, anything's permissible.
Yeah.
And then if you don't know what happens when you die or have any idea what might happen, what are there good reasons for why we believe what we believe or what happens when we die? Okay, let's dig into that. And then, where did you come from? So I think for me, and it saddens me, I think, a lot of times because I'll see somebody post something really good about the Christian faith, and then I see the comments, "Oh, you're believing a fairy tale.
Yeah.
It's a pie in the sky. It's this old man that you're, whatever." People without knowledge, I guess, is the sad thing, and they just kind of shoot from the hip and think they got it all figured out.
Yeah.
And I think sadly, maybe their experience of Christians when it has turned them off, and then everything you ever hear about Christianity from their perspective is filtering through that lens of, oh, that's what a Christian is. I'm rejecting that.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of really looking out, like you talked about in a previous episode, instead of a straw man and knocking him over. It's a steel man, so to speak, and then try to figure out, okay, what am I doing here? So
Right.
am I knocking over that straw man because I want to live how I want to live?
Right.
So as we wrapped up that last episode, we talked about the resurrection, and so that we're going to talk today about why I'm here and what is my purpose. And I think for me, the resurrection is critical. And I've heard different talks on this. We've had Mike Lacona at our church, and he's a big, his kind of main focus is the resurrection. And I remember him coming and speaking, and he said, he was talking to his wife, and his wife said, I really like being a Christian. I like the morality and all that. And so even if the resurrection didn't happen, I think I'd still be a Christian. And I loved Mike's response. He said, "Not me."
Yeah.
He said, "I would go out and live it up because if the resurrection didn't happen, eat, drink, and be merry, like Paul said, and go ahead and live your life however you want, because tomorrow we die and it's just over. Grab whatever you can in this life, and so
Yeah.
I really appreciate him being so candid, because it
Yeah.
kind of is true.
Well,
If resurrection didn't happen, sorry, I keep cutting you off, but
no, no, I was kind of cut you out.
yeah,
I'm sorry about that. Is that what I was saying? Is that what Mike is saying is consistent with Paul says. So Paul,
right,
the Apostle Paul, says something, and he says that if Christ is not raised, and the dead are not raised, and if the dead are not raised, then we are all dead in our sins. And we chuck this. The whole faith is just not based on anything. This is the central claim of the Christian faith. If Jesus died and stayed dead, you'd have no reason to believe that your sins are paid for. But if he died and rose from the dead, then that vindicates his claim to be the one who pays for your sins. So it's incredibly important that we believe this based on the truth of it, not based on the feeling of it. Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, if you're someone who believes this and you're a Christian and you've never heard of the evidence for the resurrection, but you believe he did, doesn't invalidate your faith, not even the slightest bit. But the good news is that there's great reasons to believe that he rose from the dead. I think it's far more probable than not, based on the historical evidence, that Jesus did in fact rise from the dead. And we're getting new evidence all the time. By the way, there's new stuff coming out that shows, oh boy, I mean, there's a lot of stuff circulating on the Shroud of Turin, which, is suspect in terms of whether or not it's authentic, but a lot of the new evidence is coming out that's saying, hey, this artifact might be authentic in the first place. I'll leave people to go look that up and judge for themselves. But there's good stuff coming out all the time about why we can really believe that Jesus rose from the dead as a matter of fact, not just a matter of hope. But that fact gives us hope, and it actually does, in fact, infuse our life with an objective purpose.
yeah, yeah, I like that. I love what what you said about the Shroud of Turin, because I think some people think, well, if that isn't true, then, or if it's fake, or if it isn't really Jesus, then okay, well, then it didn't happen. Well, that's just one thing that might be true, might not be true. There's
Right.
so much other evidence that we can look at.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
think it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. I was actually thinking of something. Go ahead.
Oh no, no, I was just going to say, yes, same thing. Is that you can't unravel a worldview by pulling at one thread and thinking that you've done it, because the chances of you unraveling these worldviews, religious worldviews that have been circulating for thousands of years, by just finding the one thread and pulling at it and suddenly the whole tapestry unravels, that's pretty unlikely. Brilliant people have thought through these things for a long time. So just by saying, oh, the Shroud of Turin might not be authentic, well, the Christian faith was never based on the Shroud of Turin. Never.
Right. Yeah.
It might be an evidence, but it might not be. But we have so much other stuff, as you pointed out, that is really strong. Early eyewitness testimony, non-Christian testimony about what the Christian claims were in the very beginning, which tend to show that the disciples believed that they saw Jesus risen from the dead, not having survived the crucifixion, but actually risen from the dead, and they were either willing to or did in fact go to their deaths because of this claim, and they never recanted, none of them. There's just so much evidence of that we are quite justified in believing this claim. And this is the part that I like about the Christian faith. And this goes all the way back to the first episode we talked about what is truth. The Christian claim is not Jesus said some really beautiful and flowery things. It's not that this teaching will give you inner peace. It's none of this subjective stuff. All that's true, by the way, but it hinges on, did he or did he not die and rise from the dead? It's falsifiable. It challenges you to falsify it, because either his body was still in that grave or it wasn't. And the facts show that it wasn't. So it's falsifiable. And in that sense, the Christian faith is refreshing in the sense that it invites scrutiny, invites examination, and says, because we can live up to it.
Yeah, I like that. I've always one of the big things for me is the transformation of the apostles and how they, when they were cowards and they ran from Jesus when he was taken away to be crucified, and they were, Peter denying him. They were a bunch of cowards.
Yeah.
It's interesting because we tend to in certain faiths, we tend to venerate these people and Saint Peter, and and yet they were ordinary men that were given the privilege to walk with Jesus. And then when it came down to it, though, and Peter says, "I'll never deny you," and then he ends up denying him. And they were cowards, like probably most of us would be. I know probably I would be if you were being threatened with your life. But then something happened that transformed their lives into these bold people going out and speaking for the faith. Because I think, and Paul talks about it too, about to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord, because he knew where he was going. When that inevitable thing happens to all of us, that's going to happen to all of us, is we are all going to leave this earth at some point, and I want to know what happens. I want to know what's the thing that gives me hope, and why I'm here, and what is the purpose that I have here. Understanding from, again, an eternal perspective of knowing what happens when you do pass from this life, I think is critical. I think we need to get that figured out as early as possible in your life. When I used to teach Sunday school, I used to say to the kids that, get this figured out now. As much as I could try to relay that to 5th and 6th graders.
Yeah.
But boy, you want to get this figured out now, wrestle with these tough questions now, because you don't want to live your whole life. We just had a guy at our men's group at church last Sunday talk about, he became a Christian when he was 60. And he was just sharing how he's in mid-70s now, but he said, the regrets that I have of how I lived my life, he said they still haunt me to this day, because I would have made different choices had I, figured this out earlier in my life.
Yeah. And I think that as you tie that into the idea of objective purpose, if we just put the resurrection as an anchor of history, which shows something very important. If Jesus claimed that each human being, you, me, everyone watching, everyone listening, is made in the image of God, that means that each one of us has a transcendent and incalculable worth and value. Again, to quote an atheist, Richard Dawkins, if there is no God, and the world is just selfish genes and electrons, then there would be a blind, pitiless, and indifferent universe. And then when pontificating, so to speak, on what human being purpose actually is, when he says, what is the purpose of human beings? What's our purpose? This is his direct quote. We are machines for propagating DNA. It is every living object's sole reason for living. Now, I would posit this. If there is no God, how is he wrong? If there is no God, how is he wrong? That is your purpose, to propagate DNA. So I would ask, here's the question. If you ever held a newborn baby in your arms, a baby who is like, the cheeks are so big and the face is so cute that the eyes almost feel like decorations, like they're not really functional. They're just like there for decoration because the baby's so cute. You ever hold a baby like that in your arms and say, boy, this is just a really, really cute DNA machine? You don't do that. There's something in you, and it's not just an evolutionary trick. There's something in us that recognizes that there is this search for meaning and purpose beyond replication. Viruses do that, and clearly we have more than just more cerebral matter. We actually have something that is indelible, something that is remarkable about us, which is the imago Dei, the image of God in us, that creates a transcendence to us. Now, Jesus claimed that. And he said that. Now, how do I know it's true? It's not just an evolutionary trick to fool me into thinking I have value so that I can propagate my species. Well, Jesus said, I'm made in God's image. He also said that I have strayed far away from what it means to be made in God's image. And he says, don't worry, I can fix that. I can pay the debt you owe. I can pay the price you owe to pay to show you how valuable I find you to be. You are of infinite value, and I'm going to pay an infinite price for that. And if he died and stayed dead, maybe he's wrong, maybe he's right, who knows? But he didn't. He rose from the dead, which tells me that my purpose in life, as many as we can have subjective purposes, I can have a purpose in my life based on the talents and the passions that I have that are particular to me. So if someone's watching and they love music and they feel like their purpose in life is to express music and it fulfills them, but also to create music that inspires and fulfills and speaks to people, that is a valid subjective purpose. It is the purpose that you have for your life, but it is also objectively good if it serves the humanity that God made. Because if we're just all, DNA propagators, then your music really doesn't have much purpose. Or you're being a doctor or a scientist or a lawyer or, a baseball player or whatever it is, doesn't really have an objective purpose. But if it serves something that has eternal value, now it's got purpose. And now the thing that you're doing in your life has real meat to it and real heft. It's got that, not only that subjective fulfillment, but that objective meaning behind it, because you're serving all of these beings who are made in God's image. And in doing so, not only do you serve them, but you serve the God who made them. And boy, I can't think of a better purpose than that.
Yeah, I love that. That's very, very well said. I think as we again speak openly and candidly about this stuff, and one of the arguments I'll say to people, or not argument, but something to help them understand where I'm coming from, is we can talk about all these things, and you can walk away and go, he's a buffoon. What does he know? And I can poke holes in his stuff all day. The reality is, you are still going to pass from this life. And so as human beings, I had a friend of mine dying. He was a coworker, and he passed away a couple of years ago. And I sat with him and I said, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Abdu, but I said, because I've heard this before, I said, I'm just like another beggar trying to show another beggar where to find bread.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not sitting here trying to tell you I got it all figured out, but I do know I'm going to leave this life at some point. And if I didn't share this with you, I would be doing you a disservice. What kind of friend would I be if I didn't share this with you? Because this is so important. And the beautiful thing about it is the word gospel means good news.
Yeah.
And it's good news. This is good news.
Yeah.
You don't understand. I'm trying to give you the best news you're ever going to hear in your whole life. That and we can get into probably in another episode what the gospel is. It's the best news ever. I'm not trying to tell you, hey, you gotta, keep all these rules and live like me, or or I'll tell you how bad you've been. I think people have this misconception of what a Christian really is, and sadly, because a lot of people that have called themselves Christians have told people what a Christian is, and I'm not sure they're Christians. And so going back to the source again of what did Jesus say, and what did he actually do on the cross? We can't get into that here, but it is what all this is all about. We're just trying to understand, the perspective of and what the gospel is. The gospel is, it's not good news. It's the best news ever. That he paid the price. He came and suffered instead of you, like you had talked about before, suffered in our place and paid the price to redeem us. And that's all rooted in the Old Testament of the Passover and the atonement and all that. So it wasn't done in a vacuum. It was promised that this Redeemer was going to come, and he came. And if you try to compare Jesus to other prophets or other people that lived, I mean, Jesus walked on water. He fed multitude, thousands of hundreds of thousands of people. He said he healed the lame, he healed the sick, he
raised the dead,
raised the dead, and then ultimately rose himself. And so to try to compare Jesus to just another prophet or to other so-called prophets that have come, you just can't if you're willing to, but you have to have an open enough mind to go, what did he really do? Not that Christian offended me when I was 5 and I'll never be a Christian. Okay, what did let's get to the crux of it. What did Jesus do? Is he real? Did he really exist? What did he do? and then make your decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you do make that decision, that's where this idea of what am I here for really starts to take shape. Because there is and it's not a denominational thing that I say this about. I just say this because I think it's a great summation. Is what is the purpose of humanity? Well, the Westminster Shorter Catechism says the chief end of man is to delight in God's presence and enjoy Him forever. Sorry, is to glorify God and enjoy His presence forever. So we glorify God because He's the one who made all these things even possible. But then we are meant to actually enjoy Him in relationship. And that is what is also characteristically unique about the Christian faith, is not that God is some will you have to obey, because here is a book with a bunch of rules, and all you have to do is follow these rules, and somehow you'll attain a heaven that He's not at, or work off your bad deeds or your good deeds from previous lives or whatever it is to attain oneness. No, the Christian faith promises communion with the very maker of the entire thing. And it offers relationship, which is why you and I and everyone watching and listening either has, protects, wants, or mourns the loss of relationship. We are inherently relational beings. We're not hive beings like bees. We're not herd animals, and we're not pack animals. We are relational beings. And so there's something more about us than just safety and evolutionary advantage. We want relationship. And it's because we reflect our Creator, who is Father, Son, Holy Spirit, one being, who is a being who defines relationship. And I think that actually just really dovetails so beautifully with what our purpose really is.
I love that. I don't want to step on that because I like that. There was one thing that you said that because I think of perspective on our lives too, as far as going to church, being raised in a religious home. Going to church was a duty, so you go to church, and I get to check that box that I did it this week, and then I did it in the next week. Where now I go to church because I love it. I'm going there because I want to learn. I want to know more. I want to, I'm not going there so I can check a box. I'm going there because I want to learn more about this good news. I want to continue to grow in my understanding, because it just continues to helps me again. 61, marching on, and yours tick off by
faster and faster, the older and older.
Crazy how fast it goes. And so just wanted to hopefully, with this new series, hopefully give people more insight to why I do what I do, but also to leave them with the hope and the understanding of it's such great stuff. This is so important, and we can get so busy doing things that have no lasting value. We all do it. And with all the apps out there, you can spend your whole day just playing games or whatever. But this is what's important, because we are all going to pass from this life, and we need to be talking about these things. And the most humane thing we could do, I think, is just to discuss them openly and honestly, and being vulnerable, I think is powerful too. Understanding that, hey, we're all just trying to understand.
Yeah.
So.
Isn't that right?
Dad, how do I